Right. So good morning, everyone. So welcome you all to the session. Everybody can hear me clearly?
Yeah, it's audible.
Okay. Thank you so much. All right. So my name is Vinay Siddhaya. I'm the founder of Yoga Vijnana. So those who don't know me, so welcome you all to the session for this today's talk on is Bhagavad Gita still relevant by Dr. Swaroop Rangnath on this auspicious day of Bhagavad Gita Jayanti and Christmas. So it is such a wonderful day today because today is the day when a great yogi was born in Bethlehem. And also today is the day when much before that, there's another great yogi who gave us this wonderful Bhagavad Gita. So on this day, we are here to understand about the Bhagavad Gita itself, which is a wonderful thing. And thank you all for coming again. So before we start, I want to say a little bit about Bhagavad Gita from my own experience of reading it. It is such a wonderful text that any given time, whenever you feel depressed, low, or something like that, you just open any chapter and start reading. It will still make sense, and there is a lot of things that you learn, and definitely you will feel a lot better after that. And that's how beautiful this entire text is. And I'm sure many of you already read the text also. It is not something very new to many of you probably. And the whole thing is just not about reading it, it's about how we understand it, and more than that, how we apply it into your life. And that is exactly what makes a huge difference. Because the application of Bhagavad Gita is what actually changes our life. So, and that is exactly what we are going to understand about the Gita from Dr. Swaroop today. I'm sure many are totally new to Yoga Vijnana itself today. So for those who are totally new to Yoga Vijnana, so before we start the session, I want to give a quick introduction about myself and the Yoga Vijnana itself. So basically, I'm the main teacher, the principal teacher of Yoga Vijnana. I'm the founder of Yoga Vijnana. So my conventional education actually is engineering, and it took me to a corporate life. So where I spent almost close to 12 plus years working on research of technology and all of that. And then finally, my passion drove me out of corporate life and put me into yoga. Okay, so I'm right now I've kind of quit my job and I've dedicated my entire life for spreading the science of yoga. So I've done my master's in yoga. I've done my RYT final level certification, but my main education has been Iyengar yoga, which I practiced, and when Swaroop was there, so when we practiced together long back. So and I've practiced under many teachers from different parts of India. So Yoga Vijnana was officially started in 2012. So with the intention to bring the science and philosophy together in a much more logical sense and share this science to a common man in simplest way, because we wanted to kind of reach out in a more experiential way. That's the whole intention of Yoga Vijnana. So where we give a lot of focus to the experience, because that's the only thing we believe that can uplift us in a spiritual journey. And the focus is on experience, and the experience is at the mental level. So how the whole practice that we do affects our mind, and that's the whole focus. Apart from the regular classes which we are doing for many years, and currently it is being attended by people from across the world. So we do focus a lot on yoga therapy as well. So we specialize in yoga therapy, and we also conduct a lot of yoga workshops, meditation sessions, and for those who have come to Yoga Vijnana and those who are part of Yoga Vijnana, so they understand this very well, that Yoga Vijnana is not just a yoga center, just like any other yoga center where you just come and practice and go. So for us, it's like one big family. So where we all come together and we share from each other's experience and help each other out in our spiritual journey. It's just a collective family that we are trying to build in Yoga Vijnana. So now that we'll just quickly, with this introduction, I'll just quickly go to the today's topic itself. So I want to first go ahead with introduction of Swaroop. See, Swaroop is a good friend of mine, and we have known each other for almost a decade now. So it's a long association that we have. So Swaroop was my philosophy teacher. So and we have spent time together studying a lot of things as well. So, and in fact, the name Yoga Vijnana in 2012 when we started was given by Swaroop. So he gave me tons of name. So probably I wish I would have documented all those names. It would have been helped many people. So out of that, this is one thing which catched my attention because this is something which related to my background and what I want to do. Okay. So and many thanks to Swaroop for that. So let me just quickly introduce Swaroop to you. Let me just introduce Swaroop. All right. So Dr. Swaroop Rangnath has spent 6 years in Veda Vijnana Gurukula, learning Indian thought system under the tutelage of Sri Ramchandra Bhatt. He specialized in Advaita Vedanta and Yoga. So he holds a PhD from University of Mysore in Department of Psychology. He currently works as assistant professor at Jain University, training and mentoring students in Indian psychology and personality development. He staunchly believes that yoga makes an individual vibrant and also socially productive. Hence, shares his insights on Yoga Sutras, Samskritam, chanting on Vedic scriptures, and different schools of Indian philosophies. Research is his strength, and as an independent researcher, he has developed 29 modules to understand the human mind. He is an active member of Gurudakshina Foundation Trust, an NGO dedicated to empowering rural teachers. He is one of the founders of Sattva, Samskritam Academy of Teachers Training and Value Addition. So therein is conceived the idea of very short classes as much as 15 minutes a day to learn Samskrita and Bhagavad Gita. So with this small introduction about Swaroop, this because Swaroop is not new to Yoga Vijnana. Many of you already know Swaroop. So and it's always a privilege for me to welcome Swaroop whenever he comes to give a talk to us. So thank you, Swaroop. Thanks a lot. And this is probably the first time we are meeting in this manner online. So thank you so much and welcome you all and over to you. Thank you so much.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Om Ganganapataye Namaha Om Gurubhyo Namaha Om Vyasaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayane Swayam Vyasena Vyasena Krititam Purana Muninam Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshiniam Bhagavati Mashtadashathyayinim Ambatvamanusandadhami Bhagavad Gite Bhavadveshinim. I will once again make the beginning of the Mangala. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Krithitam Purana Murina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshinim Bhagavati Mashtadashathyayinim Ambatvamanusandadhami Bhagavad Gite Bhavadveshinim. Om Vasudevasutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Well, dear friends, this word relevance itself is a deep topic of discussion. Leave Bhagavad Gita. It takes years for us to discover what is Bhagavad Gita. But the word relevance, okay, itself is very interesting. It gives us a lot of insight. So the insight it gives is this. The word relevance broadly means this: the relation of something to the matter at hand. So, you know what? If there is one thing which all of us have got by birth, as if an ancestral property, it is Bhagavad Gita. There is something peculiar to the humanity. The most peculiar thing to humanity is this: you want it or not, you get a culture. And you want to call it as a conditioning? Okay, that's okay. But we don't want to call it as a conditioning, we believe it is a culture. So by birth, you've got this. Yeah. We guys are lucky. Those people who are born in Bharata, brought up in Bharata, for them, Karagre Vasate Devi and Samudra Vasane Devi and all of these things. Karagre Vasate Lakshmi, Samudra Vasane Devi, all of these things, Bhagavad Gita, Ramayana, Mahabharata, all of these things come to us as if an ancestral property. And all of these things come to us as a culture. Okay. So now, that is the reason I told you the word relevance is something very interesting. Because only if you try to buy something new, only if you add on something new in your life, then you should ask this question: is this relevant? Now the whole point here is this: it is already with you. So the whole point that it is already with you shows it is relevant. See, there are so many things which have come in the middle. If you look at the entire ancient Bharatiya civilization as such, you get to see so many things. Yeah. And many of those things have been destroyed in the middle, or they have lost their significance amongst the practitioners. They don't anymore exist. So, what did we understand? We have already got it in a format which is already made itself relevant to us, to our life. Okay. So, there is no point asking this question: is it relevant? Yet I use this as a title for a reason, which I'll tell you at the end of the lecture. There are a few things I thought I should start my talk with, and one of those things is a story. And this is a story which actually happened in the 14th century. So I've forgotten the king's name. So I was having a nice discussion with one professor from IIM. So he had told me the actual incident. He had read out that incident to me from a very old book, printed somewhere in the 18th century. It was a very old book, and it was not in English. It was in some other language, probably Tamil, I think. I am not sure. I have forgotten that. But it is a very old conversation, and to be honest, I'm not even in touch with that professor anymore. It was almost 15 years ago. I just completed my education in Gurukula, so I uh, went and had a discussion with him because just come out of the Gurukula, I wanted to know what I can do as a student of Gurukula, what is uh, that I can add as a value to the society. How can I sustain myself? These were the questions I had, and during my Gurukula days, my teachers had always told me that there's a lot of potential in these ideas like Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads, because a lot of professors from the management background, philosophy background, and psychology background use these things for interdisciplinary research. So that's the reason I had met him. So the story was uh, I thoroughly enjoyed. So the story goes this way, or the incident goes this way. What happened is this: there was one king who had sent out an announcement that he wants to meet the happiest in the town. So if king says something, it is obvious that people have to, the ministers have to work upon. So the ministers went to each house and asked if there is one man or one woman in this house who's very happy, and whoever is the happiest, the king wants to meet. So I want to meet that happiest person. So in every house, every member was brought into a discussion, and there was some kind of a detailed conversation which was well planned out by the ministers. That conversation went on, and this went on for about 5 days, 10 days, 15 days. They went to each house in the town, and nobody claimed to be happy. And there was no fear as such of the king. They were happy meeting the king, and they had no issues with the king. But king wanted to meet the happiest for whatever reason, and nobody was uh, either ready to lie and go meet the king, or they were not in a mood to unnecessarily get into this entire activity, and they were being honest, very honest. They traveled 5 days, 10 days, 15 days. That was quite a huge town. The entire radius was about 50, 60 kilometers. They went around. Finally, somebody directed the ministers to the top of the hillock. Told, go there. There is one person sitting there. If you ever initiate a conversation with that person, and if at all that person opens up, you will definitely be able to meet the happiest person in the town. This is my strong feeling. Well, convinced, these ministers went there. He had nothing on the body, literally naked, absolutely naked. So they hesitated to speak to him. He was quite young. They hesitated to speak to that person. They eventually went and asked him, uh, I want to talk to you, or rather, we all want to talk to you. Is it okay? Well, yes, go ahead. So somebody asked him, are you the happiest person in the entire world? He told, I don't know if I'm the happiest person in the entire world. I don't know such a concept that happiness comes from competition. If there are two people competing to be happy and thereby one being happy, it's not called happiness. I don't know what you actually mean. I don't know your definition of happiness. But if you ask me personally, if you are happy, my answer would be yes. So there are a lot of scholars in those amongst those ministers. They felt a little ashamed because they always had pride in their knowledge, and they realized the entire statement was stupid. Happiest person in the world. It can't be so because uh, there is a sense of competition somewhere expressed there. So they realized what their mistake was, and finally they got an answer for what they had come. And now they told, King wants to meet you. Are you okay with that? He told, okay. And they took him to the empire, sitting there, king, in a very majestic posture on a beautiful throne. He wanted to meet this guy, known to be the happiest. He's all excited. He's about to enter. Few ministers felt it would be not so good. It would not be so good to take this guy inside in this particular format because naked. This entire idea of we being naked is not acceptable by the society. So this format is not good. Let us give him a new format. A little bit of clothes, if not to completely cover him. And they ordered something for him and they got it quickly. They wrapped something like a towel around him. And he was very quiet. He did not react much. Once the towel was tied around him, they asked if he can move and meet the king. And he stepped back, immediately stepped back. Asked, why? Are you afraid of meeting the king? No, I'm not afraid of meeting the king. But I lost the eligibility to meet the king. I was like, why? How did you lose eligibility? He told, I am happy so long as I'm doing what I want to do. Now, I prefer to be naked. The moment you wrapped a towel around me, you took away the sense of I-ness. I wanted to be in a particular way. You took away that freedom from me. I am no more myself. And you are trying to put your ideas upon me. You are trying to put your ideologies upon me. You are trying to bring all the conditionings you know. You are trying to bring all the constraints you have been taught upon me. So if you can't accept me naked, and if you are putting your ideas upon me, and if you are putting those ideas upon me and making me believe that it is not so good to meet king naked, then I think my happiness is lost. Deep within I'm happy, but still there is a sense of discomfort. I think I can be happy so long as I'm myself. The moment you step into my life and you try to bring in your value system, I am gone. I've lost my eligibility. So if you want me to go meet the king, do one thing. Just remove this piece of cloth around my waist. So they narrated this to the king. King was happy to meet the person as he was. Thereby a nice conversation happened eventually. And King asked him one question: what is happiness? So he reiterated the same thing. If I can be absolutely myself, that is happiness. And if you look at Bhagavad Gita, second chapter, 64th shloka, you will find a beautiful verse. It says, Ragadvesha yuktaistu Vishayan indriyescharn Atmavashir vidheyatma prasadam adhigachati. If there is one lesson you can take back home today, it is this word Atmavashya. You know what is being Atmavashya? Vasha is to take control of what is the question. Atmavashya. Anybody who is in control of oneself is going to be the happiest. And if you want to listen to the title once again, is Bhagavad Gita still relevant? Let me repeat that. Is Bhagavad Gita still relevant? I would tell you with absolute confidence, Bhagavad Gita is still relevant for one reason. No other education system of yours probably has taught you till now that the purpose of life is Atmavashya or Atmavashyata. To be in your own self, to be in a sense of freedom all the time, to be the way you want to be. There might be messages on the WhatsApp which will tell you life becomes beautiful when you want to be the way you want to be. But if you ask the person who sent that forward message to you or a good morning message to you, quoting something like this, being yourself is happiness, ask him, how do you want to achieve it? You wouldn't get an answer. You know why? That person himself or herself doesn't know. And I'm sure most of us, I wouldn't say ignorant, most of us are illiterate when it comes to knowing how to be ourselves. And that is the toughest thing to do. That is the toughest thing to achieve. And if Bhagavad Gita can't address something as tough as this, I would suggest you myself, don't touch Bhagavad Gita. If Bhagavad Gita has some relevance, it should be relevant only if it can address something as relevant as this. If it can start speaking about something as relevant as this. Something as tough as this. Isn't it, my dear friends? Just think about it for a moment. Anybody who taught you how to be yourself, try and go back. If your mother has ever taught you how to be yourself, if your father ever taught you how to be yourself, your grandparents, your teachers, your lecturers, your assistant professors, your associate professors, your professors, how to be yourself. Everybody tells you you have to be yourself. That's happiness. Anybody who pinpointedly taught you how to be yourself. And this is where Bhagavad Gita plays an important role. Atmavashir vidheyatma prasadam adhigachati. The moment you become Atmavashya, you are in a very joyful state. Absolutely joyful state. But you know what? We are today Paravashya, not Atmavashya. Atmavashya is something lost long back. Atmavashya is a thought we have never been taught. We are all under Paravashya. Okay? I don't know how many of you know this a Kannada film song. There is a song, Paravashanadenu. Okay? That is what is taught to you. Have become somebody's. Become somebody's. Okay? You know what? We have actually become somebody's. And the worst part is this. We don't belong to one. We belong to multiple people. When I'm in the office, I belong to 10 people. When I'm in the kitchen, I belong to 5 people. When I'm in the room, I belong to 15 people. When I'm on the street, I belong to 45 people. When I go to some Bangalore one to pay the bill, I am belonging to 150 people. Okay. So when do you belong to yourself? Have you genuinely asked this question? When was that moment you genuinely felt that you belonged to yourself? When did you feel Atmavashya? When did you last feel Atmavashya? Please think about this question. If you can't answer this question, go to Bhagavad Gita. And if you can answer this question, drop out of the path. Don't waste your time here. Continue to be happy. Atmavashye vidheyatma prasadam adhigacchati. Such a beautiful statement. You know, prasadam adhigacchati means this. Only one who is under one's own control can be in a state of prasada. Prasadam adhigacchati. Prasada is not the one what we get in the temple. Prasadam adhigacchati is one would be pleased. So, you know what? Look at the way the world works today. Only if you can please somebody, you can stay calm. But look at what Bhagavad Gita says. It is absolutely topsy-turvy. You be under your control. That is the best way to please yourself. If you want to please yourself, be under your control. The entire thought process is reversed now. The so-called politically right thought is questioned. And further it says, Ragadvesha vayukta istu. You know what? If you're under your control, there is only one possibility. Your raga and your dvesha is also under your control. I want to ask one more question honestly to all of you. When did somebody teach you to take control over your own raga and your own dvesha? Okay. Who taught you to take control over your likes and who taught you to take control over your dislikes? Okay. Let me ask you an introspective question. Imagine you have a very good friend in the office. I wouldn't call him or her as a colleague. Rather, I would call him or her as a good friend, a very good friend. Okay. Beyond the relationship of being a colleague, you have established with that person, him or her, a great friendship, maitri. And imagine somebody comes and tells you very convincingly that this person whom you love, whom you trust, whom you believe thoroughly as a great friend, has backstabbed you. And they convince you so well that you get absolutely disturbed for about 15-20 minutes. And it doesn't stop there. You find a way out to know why this person disturbed you. And already there is a sense, of disgust. Already there is some disturbance happening within you. Yeah. You're still uncertain. You're not sure, but already the very belief that somebody as close as that person would have backstabbed you is something you can't believe. Okay, there is some disturbance happening within you. So now ask yourselves honestly a question. The question is this. The question is very, very simple. Did you create the dislike for that person who was backstabbed you, or somebody else sow the did somebody else sow the seeds? Did somebody else sow the seeds of dislike in you, even for 20 minutes? Maybe after 20 minutes, you realize that person has not backstabbed you, but for 20 minutes, you are disturbed. You're questioning that person. You're in doubt. There is a discomfort, a sense of discomfort. You know what, my dear friends? That sense of discomfort was caused by somebody, and you know what? You developed a dislike for 20 minutes, and that dislike was not under your control. You did not decide to have a dislike toward that person. Rather, what happened was this: somebody else caused a dislike about somebody in you, about your own great friend, closest friend. And still we think that we are under the Atmavashya concept. We still feel somewhere that I have freedom. We still believe in free will. We still believe that I have control over myself. We still believe that everything is fine with our life. What are we genuinely referring to? When I say I have free will, what am I generally very broadly referring to when I say I have freedom? What am I referring to when I say everything is under my control in life? Nothing is under our control in life, unfortunately, my dear friends. Nothing. Absolutely nothing is under our control today. And if you want to by chance know, what is Atmavashyata? There is no better source than Bhagavad Gita. And the interesting part is the next shloka. The next shloka says, Prasade sarva dukkhanam hanirasyopajayate prasanna chetaso hyashu buddhif paryavatishthate. Now look at this statement. Buddhif paryavatishthate. They say, you will be absolutely under your control. Buddhif paryavatishthate. You will be absolutely under your control. Do you know when? When will your buddhi is your ability to decide upon a particular reality and go by that decision of yours, to be very precise and accurate and be very decisive. Do you know when you can be decisive in life? Only when you're happy. Did you know this? Only when you're happy you can be decisive. If you're unhappy, you can't be decisive. You go to a shop, there are three things in front of you. You don't know what to buy. You don't know what to buy. You're unhappy because there are three choices. And that is exactly the reason why you are not decisive about what you want to buy. Do you know when you would be decisive? You would be decisive when you exactly know what you want to do in life. And buddhif paryavatishthate. Krishna says, you will be decisive in life. Do you know when? Prasanna chetaso hyashu buddhif paryavatishthate. Only when you are extremely pleased and happy all the time, only when you are under your control, you can be decisive in whatever you do in life. Look at the beauty of that statement. If somebody came and asked you how to be decisive, probably would have given 1 hour of lecture beating around the bush, yet not taught the other person how to be decisive. The simplest way to be decisive is prasanna chetaso hyashu. Anybody who is pleased, anybody who's under one's own control can be decisive very quickly, easily. What more do you want, my dear friends? Don't we dream to be very decisive all the time? Because most of us as personalities, and in most of the occasions, in most of the instances, we are very indecisive, very indecisive. Okay? Haven't we dreamt such a state where all my decisions become better? Haven't we dreamt of such a state when all my actions reach a state of perfection? Haven't I dreamed? Haven't we all, each one of us haven't we dreamt of reaching a state of not only perfection, of not only a perfect result, but also something much higher. This being constantly there with life. Every day I take up a decision, it is perfect. Every time I take up a decision, it gets executed perfectly. Every time I execute something, I get the perfect result. What a state of thought here. What a state of thought. And you would be constantly in that state. Imagine that state. Imagine you are constantly in a state where you take up any action, it is perfect, execution is perfect, results are perfect. Do you know when that can happen? Buddhif paryavatishthate. When your decision making abilities are upright. And when will that happen? When you are pleased all the time. Dear friends, probably we were not exposed to such high quality content when we were youngsters. Probably such a high quality content was not told to us, that life all starts with ourselves. I'll tell you something not so pleasant for a moment. This example can be avoided, but still I prefer to take that. Okay, I prefer to take that because there is a strong point which I want to drive. I could have chosen many examples, but still I want to take this example. You know what? The first thing somebody wants to get into a marriage, they are told by their friends, relatives, parents, people around them. You know what is the first thing they're told? You're getting into somebody's life. You might have to make a lot of compromises. You don't know how the other person would be. Be prepared for compromises. See, how do they welcome you into a relationship? Compromises. And what is compromise? Not being oneself. That's where the beginning of any relationship is, not being oneself. That's the beginning point. That's what is told as the grand idea of getting into a relationship. But nobody teaches you that there is a middle path. There is a possibility of a middle path. What is the possibility of a middle path? The possibility of a middle path is you can be yourself without compromising. We don't actually give space to this idea of Atmavashya. Okay? And it is so easy to misinterpret Atmavashyata as Swartha. Not at all. Atmavashyata is not Swartha. There is a thick line between Atmavashyata and Swartha. Swartha is to put down the other. Swartha is to cause trouble to the other. Swartha is to make somebody uncomfortable in your presence. Atmavashyata is you being yourself, they being themselves, yet living harmoniously. Please tell me a source book which can teach you this one. And if you still find Bhagavad Gita irrelevant, I have no comments on that. And this kind of Atmavashyata, which is caused by being prasanna, by being pleased, and that leading to what? Being decisive all the time. And what would you call this? Do you know what would the management guys call this? Management guys would call this as a state of high productivity. Have you ever noticed, my dear friends? Do you know when would you be highly productive as an individual? You would be highly productive as an individual only when your decision-making abilities are high, and further when all of your decisions are executed perfectly, when your results are right. What makes you do more and more of actions? You would do more and more of such actions because each time you took a decision, it was right. Each time the execution was right. Each time the result was what you thought about. What is the automatic result? You're productive now. And where did this all start from? Atmavashyata. Because you were under your control. Thereby you were pleased. What a thought process, my dear friends. What a beautiful thought process. The next thought is even more interesting. It says, Nasti buddhir yuktasya nacha yuktasya bhavana nacha bhavayata shanti ashantasya kutas sukham. See, Nasti buddhi ayuktasya. Anybody who is not under one's own control, tasya buddhi nasti. Ayuktasya. Ayukta means one who is not under one's own control. Yoga means harmonization with the self. Ayukta, ayoga means one who is disharmonized with the self. Nasti buddhi, one who is disorganized with the self, one who is disoriented from one's own self, one who has developed a sense of disharmony with one's own self. What happens to such a person? That person is in a state of abuddhi, no decision making abilities. Nasti buddhir yuktasya, nacha yuktasya bhavana. Nacha bhavayata shantihi ashantasya kutas sukham. And somebody who is not under one's own control will not have a firm belief. Nacha yuktasya bhavana, a firm belief to live a beautiful life. Nacha bhavayata shantihi, has no conviction in life, has no shanti, has no peace. Ashantasya kutas sukham. How can one be happy by not being peaceful? Ashantasya kutas sukham. One who is unhappy, ashantaha, how can he or she be happy? Ashantasya kutas sukham. Kutaha means how? Sukham means happiness or pleasure or a pleasant state of mind. Ashantasya, please show me one person who is who is happy around you by being always not peaceful. Show me one person around you who is not in peace with himself or herself, yet very, very happy. It's impossible, my dear friends. It's absolutely impossible. If you ever want to be happy, it all starts with a peaceful state of mind. And you know what is the worst part? The worst part is this. You want it or not, this is the cycle. You being under your control, thereby you are being always in a pleasant state of mind. Thereby what happens to you? You become more decisive, you become buddhiman, you become buddhimati. And when you're only buddhiman, buddhimati, only when your buddhi is under your control, what happens to you? You will be shanta. Otherwise, no, it's not possible. The only other possibility, alternative possibility is ashanti, adukha. Shanti and dukkha all starts, shanti and sukha all starts from absolute control over the self. And I want to ask this question once again. Ask this question once again, very, 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 very candidly. Yeah. How many times haven't you blamed somebody when you're unhappy? How many times haven't you alleged against someone for your pain? How can it be? One's own loss of control over one's own self is the beginning point of disaster. Nothing else in life. If you want to understand the physiology, anatomy and physiology of disaster, anatomy and physiology of disaster starts with the fact that I have no control over the self. And if you ask me, what is self-control? I wouldn't call that word self-control as some kind of a self-restraint. I'm using the word self-control in the sense of freedom, absolute freedom. You choose what you want to do and nothing else. You decide and you do what you want to do. That's the end of it. That's the end of it. You decide what you want to do. That's the end of it. But the entire system we have built around us has made us believe that there is nothing like I doing what I want to do. It has told you that for every action I do, there are 100 things I have to consider. Otherwise, things won't happen. Common sense. You ask yourself, when did you do something what you genuinely wanted to do with absolute freedom? And I will tell you, I'll honestly tell you, that was the day when you were happy. That was the day when you were joyful. That was the day when you felt abundant, adequate. That was the day when you felt with yourself at ease. Not otherwise. You know what? If you like Mysore pak, rasgulla, whatever the sweet or whatever the dish, and that is your favorite. Okay, let me tell you, that is your favorite. I come and give it to you, and I'll make you eat with a gun. Would you enjoy it? Even the favorite dish you wouldn't relish because there is a fear of death. If you can't enjoy the favorite dish with a fear of death, how can you execute what you want with the fear of constraints around you, my dear friends? Go back to the story. The moment a piece of cloth was wrapped around him, he lost the eligibility to present himself in front of the king as a happiest person. That's the beauty of life. And if you want more lessons, The entire second chapter is dedicated. And you know what? I have skipped the entire process of how to achieve here. What I've done is I have taken the results of the second chapter. What I'm discussing now is the results they have promised you. They have told in the end of the second chapter, this is the state where you can achieve prasada, atmavashyata, and Arjuna has arrived at atmavashyata. Sorry, Krishna has arrived at atmavashyata. How? By explaining all the shlokas from the first shloka till about 63rd shloka. I have arrived at 63rd. I'm talking about the end result. If end result is so beautifully designed and structured, imagine the process which Krishna has discussed about becoming Atmavashyata. Okay. Dear friends, if you ever want to approach Bhagavad Gita in your life, do one thing. Approach Bhagavad Gita's each chapter as a process leading to an end result. A process leading to an end result. What is the process? It takes me probably a few weeks to tell you what is the process to arrive at this state, what I'm speaking today. There are very few things which I keep on repeating in most of my lectures, but there is one thing I cherish doing it. And this is one conversation which I had with my friend. Many would have listened to this example or this narration of mine in the past. I don't mind doing it again. As I told you, there are very few things which I repeat, but this is one thing I do it out of a lot of awareness. I don't do it randomly. I don't do it like a robot. I do it very mindfully. I got into a conversation with my friend at around 8 o'clock. The conversation went on till about 12 a.m. He looked at the clock. It was 12 a.m. He was shocked. He got up. He forgot that he was enjoying 4 hours of discussion. He suddenly got up, packed up his bag. He went to my house and he was telling, man, I have to go to my office tomorrow. And if I have to go to my office tomorrow, I have to sleep well today. If I don't sleep tonight, I can't go to office tomorrow. And why do I go to office tomorrow? I go to office tomorrow because I have to go to the office again day after tomorrow. Why do I go to the office day after tomorrow? Because I have to again go to office the day again, the day after that. So in the middle, whatever happens, you sleep. Why? Because you have to go to the office. You eat. Why? Because you have to go to the office. You talk to your children, wife, husband, everybody happily in the house. Why? Because you can't take this anger there on the colleagues and the boss. You can bring that back home, but you can't take it there to the office. So you do everything. You do everything literally in the house. Why? Because you have to go to the office. Look at it. For a moment, decide to skip tonight anyhow. Tomorrow Saturday. Do one thing. Skip sleeping this Sunday and try and go to office on Monday. This is a very scary thing, because if you've not slept, you can't work well in the office. So look at the life. Our entire life is just revolving around certain ideas. I'm not talking about good and bad here. Don't confuse me. I'm not talking about good and bad here. I'm just asking you a very honest question. Have you seen the pattern of life? Have you seen the pattern of life? We are doing so many things around one thing. Yet we claim to be free, yet we claim to be executing free will, yet we claim to be executing freedom. So this discussion went on with my friend for a long time, and we made a list of things what we do. Eventually it came down to a point, even we take vacation because we want to go back to office in a much happier manner at the end of the year. If we don't take vacation and work throughout the year, we'll go crazy and we can't go to the office ever again. So even our vacation is to only go to the office in a better form as a better human being. Such a sad state of life here. Imagine vacation is also resulting in we becoming good employees. What freedom am I speaking here? What Atmavashyata? Isn't this an absolute Paravashyata? This is heights of Paravashyata. Okay? Why do you need a Sunday? You know the answer now. Because you need at least 2 days of break in the middle to again go and see all your colleagues. This is paravashyata. And you know what happened during the lockdown? Most of us couldn't stay with our family members. We're feeling so tired to look at our family members. There is an absolute sense of paravashyata because your family member keeps on telling you what to do, what not to do. At least when you were in office, you had less pressure from this person in the house. Now you have 24/7 this person telling you what to do, what not to do. Highest levels of paravashyata. So there is a way we have to approach Bhagavad Gita. Each chapter has a process. Each chapter has a result, very beautifully delineated, very beautifully designed, very beautifully presented. Starting from 53rd shloka, if I remember it well. Sthita prajnasya ka bhasha samajhastasya keshava sthitadhih kim prabhasheta kimasita vrajeta kim. It starts from there, somewhere 52, 53, and you get a wonderful process as to how to reach this state here. How to be yourself. You know what? I'm sure all of your parents would have told you. I'm sure everybody in the society speaks about this. Come what may, pain or pleasure, be yourself. Come what may, pain or pleasure, be yourself. And they also tell you, if something is bothering you, be yourself. Even if you are very happy, be yourself. This is what is told to you, taught to you. Am I right? Sukheshvanudvignamanaha, dukheshvanudvignamanaha, sukheshu vigataspruhaha, vitaraga bhayakrodha, sthitadhir minurichyate. So, whenever there is sukha, be the same. Whenever there is dukkha, be the same. You know what? People think too deeply into this particular shloka. I tell everybody, I keep on telling everybody, don't think deeply about this shloka. There is no deep meaning in it. One of the simplest shloka I have ever read, understood in my life is this shloka. Dukheshvanudvignamanaha, sukheshu vigataspruhaha. You know what? What does it say? It says, whenever you are happy, be the same. Whenever you are sad, be the same. Whenever you are in sad state, dukheshu anudvignamanaha, don't lose your mind. Sukheshu vigataspruhaha. When you get whatever you want, don't be attached to it. Okay? This is the easiest shloka to understand, and this is the easiest principle to practice in life. Trust me on this. This is the easiest principle to practice in life. I'll tell you why. So this is what my teacher taught me. With this, I end today's session. So this is one procedural thing I thought I should discuss with all of you. One procedural thing I thought I should discuss with all of you. So I went and asked my teacher, what do you mean by being the same in both the states of mind? That is a difficult state now, most difficult state. So this is one question which bothered me for a long time, for years. And then when I realized I can't achieve this, I went and asked my teacher. He told, Samanvagiru. Okay? Samaloštashma kanchanaha. Samadukhe sukha dukhe samaya kritva. Labha labho jaya jayo. Even in labha, alabha. In gain, in loss. In victory and in loss. Whatever the position of your life is, be the same. I was wondering how to be the same. If you can do this much, my dear friends, trust me, you have won the life. Nothing more to achieve in life. You know what? There's nothing more to achieve in life. If you can be the same, nothing more to achieve in life. Okay? Imagine somebody comes, sits next to you, starts spitting on you. How would you feel? Absolutely insulted. But before that, they would do this. They would sit in front of you. They would praise you for half an hour. They would talk about all the good qualities you have. They exaggerate that further. They give a nice presentation. You actually did not know that you were actually so good. It happens now when you take a picture in DSLR camera, you never realize you were so handsome or beautiful before that. Suddenly, this picture will make you feel handsome or beautiful. So that is somebody, there is somebody who does this to you. He or she comes to you, praises you so well, you feel mesmerized for a moment. You start wondering, am I so good? You will suddenly have this question, am I so good? So they would do this for half an hour. After half an hour, they would start literally spitting on you. and start throwing cow dung water. What is your reaction? Start thinking here, imagining. At least imagination is so good here. Start thinking honestly. You know what is your defense mechanism at that moment? I never told this guy to praise me. Who is he to come and throw cow dung water on me and spit on me? Am I right? Eventually, what do we want? We only want the good part, not the bad part. Am I right? The moment we use the defense mechanism, what does it show, my dear friends? It clearly shows the defense mechanism that we only wanted the good things, not the bad things. This is exactly what has happened to all of us. Now, my dear friends, here is the answer to all of you. As I was telling, my teacher gave me this particular solution. My teacher gave me this particular mantra, not the mantra to chant, but the mantra to practice for the rest of the life. Okay. With that, I end my session. Listen to this mantra if this can help you a lot. So, Samanata, being absolutely stable. One take home lesson for today. I wouldn't go into the details of the procedure, but I'll give you a very broad procedure. I'll tell what I understood. Maybe he has told something much deeper, which I haven't understood. But this is my first opinion of or first understanding of whatever he has told, and I've been very humbly practicing that. See, we don't want to get insulted. Do you know why? We are afraid of the fact that we are insulted in front of 10 people. Okay, this is the greatest trouble we have. Imagine you are working in the garden, you are wearing a tight pant, and you bend down and your pant torn off. Nobody is around. Would you feel ashamed about it? No, just go change your pant and come back. But imagine the same thing happens in front of 25 people. You feel ashamed now. The problem is not that we are afraid of being insulted. The problem is we are afraid of being insulted in front of people. This is the greatest psychology behind insult. Remember this. Insult is never an issue. Always remember this. Insult is never an issue if it happens in a private manner. Insult is an issue only when it happens in the public. Because I see insult only in the public, but if it happens within a private space, we see it as a mistake of ours. See the perspective. It was my mistake. I wore a tight pant and went to do gardening, so it torn off. So I would want to rectify it. Next time I go do gardening, what would I do? I wouldn't wear such a tight pant. But if I do this in the public, what happens? It becomes an insult. Look at the perspective. Mistake becomes an insult in the public. But if I can take that mistake also in the public, do you know what I would do? I wouldn't feel insulted. Rather, I would find a way to rectify the problem. So there is no question of insult. Insult is a word which we have polished it when it comes to a public space. In private space, what I call as a mistake immediately becomes an insult in the public space. Look at the definition. Nothing else. Nothing else. Absolutely nothing else. This is the beauty of life. Imagine somebody who's very strong, overpowering, comes and starts spitting at you in your private. You know that this person is very strong, you can't overtake. What do? You surrender. But somebody does this in the public, you would try to drag attention of people and make sure this person is punished, because you have so many people who can support you for that person's actions against you, isn't it? See the way we define insult and mistake. So that day, my teacher told me one thing. No insult will come on you or in your path unnecessarily. Only if you have made a mistake, that mistake turns into an insult. So from now on, why do you have to look at an insult and an insult? Just look at something as a mistake, rectify it, you'll be fine. Because rectification of mistake is a path to happiness. And no, don't be overjoyed by happiness. Why? Because you have only rectified one mistake. So what is there to be joyful? There are many more mistakes to be rectified. So till you rectify all the mistakes, don't be overjoyed. Be joyful because you've rectified one mistake, but there are many more mistakes to be rectified. So there are still moments which you can experience as joy. So this is a cycle. You make a mistake, you rectify it. This is a cycle. And this is what you call as insult, and this is what you call as happiness or achievement. So this is only a mere definition. Rather, this is only a mere interpretation of your of certain words in your own for your own convenience. With this said, I would wind up today's talk, and I want to spend some 15 minutes upon something else now. But before that, before I do that, I would want to take some questions, if any, and you know, if I can answer those questions, I'll definitely answer them. I have nothing to hide, nothing to conceal. But if I can't answer, I'll take those questions back home and I'll work on them for some time. And if we ever get an opportunity to meet each other, I'll definitely deliver that answer to you in the future. I hope to answer some of your questions now, and then we take it ahead. Yeah. I have a small project with all of you to discuss. I don't want Bhagavad Gita Jayanti Day to be one more day. You know, for Mother's Day, what Amazon does is they'll give you offer. So Mother's Day has turned into an offer or thinking of mother on one particular day. I don't want Bhagavad Gita Jayanti to be one more such event where you think of Krishna, Arjuna, Bhagavad Gita on one day and forget it. So I want to take this Bhagavad Gita in a much broader manner, bring it back to your life. So I have a project which I'll have to explain. It takes about not more than 10 minutes. It's a very easy project for me to talk about. I'll explain that, and that's the last part, the climatic part of today's session. But in the middle, I thought I'll take up the questions first. Yeah.
So maybe I'll just give a background of what you want to say.
ಅದು ನಾವಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳಿ ಪರವಾಗಿಲ್ಲ ಅಲ್ವಾ?
ಅಲ್ಲ,
ಕ್ವೆಶ್ಚನ್ಸ್ ತಗೊಂಬೋಣ.
ಕ್ವೆಶ್ಚನ್ಸ್ ಆದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಹೇಳಿ.
ಕ್ವೆಶ್ಚನ್ಸ್ ಆದ್ಮೇಲೆ And there's already Venkatesh who has raised his hand, so if you can allow unmute him, probably can ask that question. Yes, Venkatesh sir.
Good morning, Swarup. So you were saying that you have to be unmoved by whatever happens, be it happiness, be it sadness. But my question is that if you are being unmoved by anything that happens, how will it lead to any kind of actions, any kind of corrections?
Okay.
And I find this in Krishna as well, like because he was moved by whatever actions were happening to him. Was it not that's why he took certain measures, and he went into war, he went into defeating Kamsa and other people, because something affected him, right?
Exactly. So remember this. This is a nice question. Thank you, Venkatesh. Probably I should have added this point under the procedure part. See, whenever an action happens, two things emerge out. From an action, two things emerge out. Okay. The first thing which emerges out of an action, is called as the result of the action. The second thing which emerges out of the action is called as the emotion associated with it. So what we should be unmoved by, is this. We should be unmoved by our own emotions. We should be moved by the results. Today what is happening is we are moved by the emotions more than the results. Okay. Personal emotions are actually causing an impact upon the results. Results are something which have to be definitely be impacted by. You are absolutely right. Today, more than results impacting us, it is our own emotions which are impacting the further actions. Yeah. So what Krishna is trying to tell here is Sukhesh Vanudvigna, Dukhesh Vanudvigna Manaha, Sukhesh Vikataspuraha, or Sukhadukke Samaya Krita. What is he trying to tell here is, let the actions happen, let the corresponding results also occur. Don't be moved by the results at a personal level, at an emotional level. Okay, let me tell you honestly, there is one description in Mahabharata. I am unable to narrate the shloka as it is. You know, he says, Krishna says, Krishna had no sense of anger towards Kamsa when he was killing him. You know what? He was killing Kamsa. Krishna was killing Kamsa as an activity. That's all. But imagine somebody insults you and you get a chance to insult them back. How would you react? Happily insult them, wait for an opportunity, because you've been personally insulted. You are waiting for that opportunity to give a vent to all the emotions you have reserved and you have contained all these days. Krishna had no sense of revenge towards Kamsa. There was no sense of revenge. It was an action for him. Simple. So get absolutely get moved by the actions of the results you perform, but don't be moved at the personal level. Let your emotions not move you towards certain things. Hope I have answered your question.
Okay, fine, got it. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
got it. Thank you.
Can I ask a question, Dr. Swaroop?
Yeah, definitely, sir.
I'm Dr. Madhu Nagesh here. Thanks for the wonderful lecture. Really enjoyed it. So yeah, coming back to this emotion and action. Yeah, from what I understand is, yes, Krishna says, do not let your emotions impede your actions, because the moment we get caught up in our emotions, we will not be able to take the right action. Krishna is never saying not to take action, of course. He's always a karma yogi. So only thing is we should have some emotional intelligence and decide what is the best course of action for the individual and for the society. I think that's what is the essence of Bhagavad Gita, isn't it?
Yes. What is your question there? You want to know the essence of Bhagavad Gita?
Yeah, the essence of Bhagavad Gita is about keeping self-control and doing good for yourself and the
arrogant
society.
to tell that this is the essence of Bhagavad Gita. I wouldn't be arrogant to tell that this is the essence of Bhagavad Gita. So I just brought a point today because this was something which all of you could easily connect with. Okay, so I tried to bring out a few new dimensions to it. That was the reason I took this particular point. See, the essence of Bhagavad Gita, I'll be very honest. If you go and ask a management guru, he would tell you Bhagavad Gita helps you to manage yourself better. If you go and ask a psychologist, he will tell you Bhagavad Gita will give you certain results. They would give you the typical picture of Krishna Arjuna as counselor and counseling and all of these things. I wouldn't play with those words. I will be very straightforward with this. Bhagavad Gita is only one. It's called. It has only one purpose. It is called the Moksha Shastra. The purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to liberate you. Okay, it has no ordinary goals. Let us not think Bhagavad Gita will help us to manage our emotions. There is all byproduct. Okay, byproduct, yes. At the second chapter, there are certain shlokas which will help you to manage your emotions. In third chapter, it will help you to manage the society. In fourth chapter, it will tell you how to be at house, yet to be a sannyasi. Actually, should have taken fourth chapter. It would have been very joyful for all of you couples out there. Be at home, yet to be a sannyasi. Such a beautiful state. So, those are the essence of each chapter, but all of them put together, the essence is liberate yourself. Liberate to a state where you are not bothered of what is happening around you. Okay, if you know the story of Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi at the age of 14 had a near-death experience in the school. So he one day left his house, went and sat near the cave there, and he was sitting in the cave. After about a few years, Sheshadri came and noticed Bhagavan Ramana sitting in the cave and doing some tapasya. Suddenly, he tried to wake up Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi from his meditative state. And what he realized was it took Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi about 40-50 minutes to come out of Samadhi. But his hamstring region, the skin around the hamstring region was completely gone. It was eaten off by the insects. Okay, that is a set of liberation. Whatever happens to forget to me, to my body also. Me in the sense, forget to what happens to my mind. Even to my body, something happens, I'm not bothered. That is the kind of liberation Bhagavad Gita is trying to help you all achieve. Okay, Bhagavad Gita is very ambitious. Okay, Krishna is very ambitious. Krishna has no ordinary goals for any one of you. You know what? We are in an age where we have brought yoga to therapy. Given an opportunity, we would bring even Bhagavad Gita to therapy. Okay, so I have to tell this very clearly. Don't bring down Bhagavad Gita to a therapy, please. Of course, it has therapeutic effects. Okay, just because it has therapeutic effects, don't bring down Gita to therapy. It is a text clearly intended at achieving something much, much, much bigger. It will not do anything ordinary. Mokshaishyami ma suchaha. Do you remember the Onion movies? Caption throughout the movie, Mokshaishyami ma suchaha. Don't be in pain. Mokshaishyami, I will liberate you. Hey, anybody who can tell you this here? Anybody who has the guts to tell you this? I will liberate you. Come with me. Don't be in pain. Okay? And no conditions. Krishna will not tell you, I will liberate you only on these conditions. You have to give me patra only, pushpa only. You have to give me fruits, only apple. What does he say? Patram, pushpam, phalam, toyam. Give me anything, I will be happy. Okay? And now there are some people who ask me this question. Why should I give something to him? See, the point is not that Krishna is craving to get something from you here. See, the purpose of giving somebody is to initiate a conversation. See, would I go to meet somebody and just start a conversation? The best way to start a conversation is I offer you something, I give you a cup of coffee, and we get into the mood of the conversation. So Krishna is telling, come on, develop a rapport with me. There is a way to develop a rapport with me. So patra, pushpa, phala, toya, fruits, flowers, etc., like coffee, tea, let us sit with a conversation. Beyond a point, he doesn't want anything. It is only the initial stage. There are many people who ask me, what Krishna can't find patra and pushpa asking from us. No. He is very self-adequate. He wants nothing from us, basically. Everything is fine. It is only the beginning point of conversation. Okay? And beyond a point, he doesn't want anything from you. Okay? Beyond a point, he wants nothing from you. So imagine a guy who comes and tells you, come guys, I will remove you out of your pain. Yeah? I will remove you out of your pain. Come guys, I will liberate you. Why do you have to still search for the relevance of Bhagavad Gita? Yeah, come on, go start studying, no? Start studying, reading Bhagavad Gita, no? Somebody who promises to liberate you, yeah? Develop a personal rapport, go enjoy. Okay? So this is the basic idea. The rapport starts with something, no? Some exchange, no? That's all. Yeah. Anything else? Pradeep Kumar. Okay. I don't know the time constraint if I have any, but I'm okay taking Pradeep Kumar's question. I'm not sure if I can take many more questions beyond Pradeep Kumar's.
Yes, sir. Yes, please go ahead. So what we can do is we finish the explanation of the project because some people will start dropping off later. So probably question answers we can just do it little after 10 minutes.
That's okay, Vinay. We should not be too concerned about who drops out. If they genuinely want, they'll stay back. We should not be too bothered about it. So let us complete Pradeep Kumar's question and then take
one more question there in the chat. Probably we can finish the question.
Let us not force our idea upon anybody. If they genuinely want to stay back, they will stay back. I'm okay with that. Yeah. Pradeep Kumar, yes. Go ahead, Pradeep. We have to probably unmute Pradeep. Pradeep? Should he unmute himself or you have to do it, Vinay?
I think they can do it themselves.
Oh, is it?
Hello. Yeah, Swaroop.
Yeah.
I have unmuted myself. It was so beautiful. I understand the concepts of what you have said. And to embrace the oneself being like being oneself of happiness, I choose meditation. And this is one of the things, like there are books which also says the same. And do you think I can embrace this by listening to this? What kind of actions can I take so that I can embrace it? And I want to add a bit to it. Based on my point of view, when there is a saying like world is a illusion and Maya and Upaya, you understand that, right? And if you take an action also, like let's say I am a human being, I have sexual attraction to other sex person, and I don't do without an emotion. How can I can control that and just take an action?
Okay. So this is lengthy answer. I don't know how to cut it short. I'll do my best. So there are two questions I think you've asked. One is how to embrace ourselves, how to accept ourselves, if I can rephrase it. Second part is how do I do certain actions without emotions? Am I right? Have I rephrased your questions right?
Yes.
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 So I'll
Yes,
answer the
Guru.
second question first, because that is an answer I've learned from Paramahamsa Yogananda. So Paramahamsa Yogananda, in the very first page of the book writes, of his book Autobiography of a Yogi writes, or the second page probably, that my parents used to have a sex not for any pleasure, but rather responsibly to have productive, socially productive children. Not the exact lines, a similar line he writes. So he says, my parents never saw pleasure in the sex. Rather, they saw responsibility in the sex. So the best way to not add an emotion in whatever you do is ask yourself a simple question. Are you doing it in a responsible manner? Are you doing it for a personal pleasure? Whenever there is a personal pleasure, you are bound to be caught up by emotions. If you can do something not because of a personal pleasure, but because it is a responsibility, trust me, it will be absolutely an activity that doesn't bother you. Most of us do all of the actions, or rather 90% of the actions, with a personal touch to it, wherein the personal touch is not only in the sense of responsibility, personal touch in the sense of pleasure. Remove pleasure, add responsibility, even sex becomes one more activity. Otherwise, sex becomes an idea of pleasure and less responsibility. You aren't bothered what happens to the other person. You aren't bothered about what happens to you. What you want is a simple pleasure. Okay, that is the answer, and I hope that solves the question. But coming to the first question, so you told about meditation being one way to embrace yourself. So I have to add this, my dear friends. I have insisted on this for a long time, and even Vinay, Sri Vinay speaks about this quite frequently. Till you don't learn to spend time with yourself, without doing anything, your life doesn't go one step ahead. The problem is we want somebody to be with us, and that somebody can be something as abstract as a phone or an internet or some music. So why can't you spend time with yourself? When I say spend time with yourself, you have to be all by yourself, nobody with you. If you can't spend 1 hour with yourself without sleeping, generally what happens is if you are with yourself for 1 hour, you sleep off. So the best way to embrace yourself is not even meditation. If that is a much higher state, what you're doing is right and not stopping you from doing the meditation. That's a much higher state. In a much preliminary state, my suggestion to all those people who want to embrace themselves is, you know what? Spend time with yourself. No phone, no food, no sleep, no internet, no music. You with yourself. Okay? Imagine I am sitting here with myself. Let thoughts come, whatever they want, let them come. But I am just sitting here. I will not be distracted by anything around me. And this is the best way to embrace yourself, because this is what is called as existential joy, or this is what is called as existential meaning. If you can't find a meaning to your own existence, see, Krishna says at one place, he says in one statement, there is nothing as bad as self-criticism, it seems. Nothing as bad as self-criticism. Okay? And he says self-criticism is the worst thing to do in life. I think I'll get the shloka very soon. So he says the worst thing to do in life is self-criticism. Don't ever think you're Ashakta. So the problem most of us have is we think we can't do anything. We want some support. And our support can be upon what? Our dependability is upon what? If you're very in a painful state, what do you want? Hey, let me listen to music and relax myself. Come on. Too ordinary thinking. For you to come out of pain, you want a music and you can't depend on your own self. So, my dear friends, start enjoying existential loneliness. Life will be on track. Honestly ask yourselves, aren't you even in a state to be with yourself? So to remove your pain, instead of you depending on yourself, would you depend on music? Isn't it scary? Yeah. So if you want to embrace yourself, meditation is a much higher state. And I don't know what kind of meditation you are referring to, because I have a comment on that. This is a personal comment. I'm not talking about you as an individual. I have a problem with most of those people who meditate. My problem is everyone speaks about dhyana. My question to them is, have they completed pratyahara and dharana? Because without pratyahara and dharana, anybody going to dhyana, have a question, sir, I'm not targeting you. Don't take it wrong in a wrong manner. You might have finished pratyahara and dharana, then gone into dhyana. But generally, when people tell I want to start dhyana, have a question. Because without pratyahara and dharana, I don't know what kind of dhyana people directly get into. That's a very scary state. So otherwise, yes, that's one of the ways to embrace yourselves. But I would suggest you to depend on yourself in existential loneliness, and that is the best way to start with. Yeah. Having said this,
There is one more.
to have answered Pradeep Kumar sir's question, I would go ahead, Vinay. I spent exactly 6 to 7 minutes. I wouldn't take much
One
time.
more question there.
I would want to explain a project to all of you, my dear friends. And this is not a personal project or a money-making project, nothing like that. This is a project that is intended at reaching out to people and make Bhagavad Gita something which is more approachable, because today all of our houses will have one Bhagavad Gita, but if there is one thing untouched in everybody's house, it is Bhagavad Gita. Okay, everybody will have a Bhagavad Gita in their house. I'm sure. Anybody who has no Bhagavad Gita in your house, please raise your hand. Just because if you moved into a new house, there might be such a possibility. But if you're staying in a house for 5-6 years, I'm sure nobody in this participant list of 53 would raise their hands. Everybody will have one Bhagavad Gita's copy. I'm very sure. And that Bhagavad Gita's copy is untouched. Clean paper, pure white. Okay. Letters intact. There is no corner of the book which has been folded here and there. It is so clean. Am I right? There is one Bhagavad Gita book in everybody's house untouched. Okay, so let us give meaning to that book today. Okay, that's the whole project. So I have a project which I have already experimented. The trial period is over. I have executed wonderfully, and we have certain people who are actually coming today evening to my event, including Vinay and his Srimati, and having a look at what we have done as part of trial. So what we have done is, I have involved 28 people in the level 1 pilot project. So in the pilot, what I did was this: I created 4 groups. Okay. And in each group, there were 3 people, maximum 4 people. I identified 4 leaders. For each group, there was a leader. So I directly taught to those 4 group leaders first chapter. How? Daily, 10 minutes, 2 shlokas. That's all. Only 2 shlokas. See, everybody talks on the phone for 2 minutes daily, 10 minutes daily. To somebody, something random, some gossip, something unwanted. Rather, why don't you speak something important? What is that important thing? Teach the chanting of Bhagavad Gita to one person whom you know is your closest friend, who is open to learn something like that. 10 minutes it takes, yeah, just 10 minutes. 2 shlokas. Or rather, start from 1 shloka. It takes 10 minutes maximum. Okay? By the time you come to second chapter, 2 shlokas. By the time you come to third chapter, in the same 10 to 15 minutes, you will learn 3 shlokas. Okay? Now, do you know what happens? Daily, you will develop this habit of learning something for 10 minutes. This will psychologically impact you over a period of time. You will develop regularity, my dear friends. So what is the most consistent thing in our life? The most consistent thing in our life is our own inconsistencies. Our inconsistency is the most consistent thing in our life. Okay, to get rid of inconsistency, this is the best project you can take. Every day, 10 minutes, 2 shlokas. Now, this leader who has learned from me chapter 1 will now become part of the group. That's all. He or she won't be anymore the leader. Now, the person who was receiving from the leader directly the chapter 1, that person, second person, will come under me now in the chapter 2. So now that person will learn the entire chapter 2 from me. You know what is the benefit? Second person now will learn how to pronounce the Samskrita shlokas properly. And chapter 3 will be received by the third person in the group now. By the end of chapter 3, everybody will get to know how to pronounce properly, the typical Samskrita pronunciation. I don't have the chance to show my videos here. I don't have them on the laptop, unfortunately. And I welcome all to the today's evening. Anybody who is in the Bangalore today can come and drop into my office today. There is a nice event. Anybody can come if you really want to come. And you will get to see how engineers, lawyers, doctors, anybody in that group will chant it so precisely in a chaste manner. If you listen to them, you would start wondering if they're Sanskrit scholars. I've done no special effort. Every day, 1 or 2 shlokas, I pass it on to the team leader. This way, by the end of 3 or 4 chapters, everybody would have got a chance to meet me directly, learn 1 chapter from me. By the time they learn 1 chapter from me, they will master their pronunciation skills. It takes 10 minutes a day. And after each chapter, I will deliver a talk. If they're in Bangalore, they can come to my center. It's in KR Road. And if they're not in Bangalore, they can attend the webinars. And monthly once, I'll give the summary of 1 chapter. If it is not monthly once, 45 days once. So I had started the orientation of first chapter already, but then lockdown came and too many webinars, and I did not want to add one more webinar and make it a headache. But generally, the purpose of this project is you learn how to chant. After every 45 days, you get the summary of 1 chapter. So now you know Bhagavad Gita. Before, see, I always tell this, 99% of people who criticize Bhagavad Gita have never read Bhagavad Gita. That is the problem. Anybody who reads Bhagavad Gita, understands Bhagavad Gita, will fall in love with it. There is no reason to hate Bhagavad Gita. They will fall in love with it. Okay? That's how systematic, scientific it is. So, if you guys want to approach me as a group, you can do. Vinay will share my email ID. Why Vinay? I will only do it if I have the access to it. So, anybody can chat box for it. If anybody wants to take up this, they can do it. Okay? So, this happens over the phone, as simple as this, 10 minutes over the phone. It just happens like that, 10 minutes over the phone. Okay, so this is one thing. And secondly, this project involves no cost except for a registration fees. That registration fees is for a purpose, and I'll be very honest about it. The registration purposes, see, I have spent about 1.5 lakhs, not completely, it's a little less than that, to produce Bhagavad Gita audio. And this audio is not ordinary audio. This is done in a professional manner in a studio. And it has taken me 4 months to complete 700 shlokas chanting every day. The voice is almost consistent because human voice changes every 1 hour once. Okay, so I had to do a lot of research on this, keep my voice intact, and I have to do a lot of recording. So I give this recording for everybody for this registration fees. Then the fee structure is this: if there are 6 people in the group, imagine this. Only 1,000 per person per group, not per person, per group. So if there are 6 people will be learning every month. Out of the 6 people, only one fellow pays the fees, 1,000 rupees per month. Why? Because that person who is the leader will pay the fees. Why? It is his headache, responsibility towards making everybody learn. Because anything given for free, people will take it for granted. Now that person has paid the fees, he has learned it, and he has become more serious. We'll make sure that the last person in the group will learn it. If there are 6 people in the group or one in the group, or rather 2 in the group, the fees is not for everybody, only to the leader. The leader will pay the fees and make sure everybody in the group learns it. So you know what happens? You won't believe this, my dear friends. All of those 28 people who came into the pilot, nobody know anybody. In the sense, nobody knew each other. Today, all of them are friends. They talk to each other. They go to cafe coffee day. They meet. I will not be in the picture also. There are so many people actually counseling each other also. You know, typical listening skills are there in Indians. You tell my your problem, I will listen, and I will tell my problem, you listen. So this is the kind of rapport and friendship they have developed today. Okay, they meet in multiple places. So you will develop a new set of friends who are like-minded. Okay, there are many other benefits like this, and you get to know for every 45 days once you will get to know Bhagavad Gita's meaning also, 1 chapter's meaning. And I will take a more scriptural approach. I will bring the original Sanskrit scriptures, commentaries, and all of Shankaracharya, Madhvacharya, etc. Give you a lot of information also along with it, and also some activities I have planned. I'll give you some activities which you can take back home. So the whole point is this: get into new groups, find new friends, learn Bhagavad Gita chanting. That will bring a lot of joy into you. And I'll be very candid about this. Imagine there are a group of people who come from orphanage at this and all, they don't have money. And forget orphanage. Even if a rich guy like Bill Gates comes and tells me, I want to learn Bhagavad Gita, I can't pay you money. Money is not a concern. If somebody is dedicated, trust me, my dear friends, if somebody is dedicated, that's what I want. 28 people whom I chose in the first pilot project, nobody paid a single rupee fees because I had put a condition. Everybody should learn in a dedicated manner. So all the 28 people in the pilot have not paid a rupee fees to it, except for the registration fee, which I had used all the money for the recording purpose. And I assure you this, You will not get this audio, this precise audio, traditional audio, flawless audio anywhere. It is almost flawless. We have done great research on it. Great time was spent on it. And we are going to produce more such audios. In fact, we have an audio channel on YouTube, which we have released a lot of audios in the past. And in case you want to just subscribe to that, you can go and check all the audios. Okay, this is the broad project. In case anybody is interested, you can mail me. I'll summarize my project in one sentence. You have an opportunity to learn Bhagavad Gita shlokas. That is done in the most simplest manner. 10 minutes a day. Beneficiary is you. How you will develop regularity. And I have almost 20 people in the project who have told me, Swaroop, because of this, I have become more consistent now. This 10 minutes has made me very consistent, and I'm using this consistency in every other action I do in life. Because at the end of the day, if I can become consistent in life, you would have won everything. Okay, that's the main project. So other things like fees and all, to be very honest, I'm not even bothered. If you don't pay me and if you tell me I'm committed to this, Swaroop, I'm more than happy. But I want people to learn Bhagavad Gita, enjoy it, don't comment unnecessarily and criticize it. Learn, and I assure you, my dear friends, your life is going to change forever. Anybody who is in the contact of Bhagavad Gita meaningfully will live a meaningful life. With this told, let me end this class. Thank you for those few compliments out there. Hope to meet you all once again soon with more sessions. So I have not kept this class from a typical informative perspective. I wanted to ask some questions and make you all think. But in the upcoming days, there are a lot of information which I can share. So I'll do that as well. There's a lot of interesting information which you can receive from Bhagavad Gita. I'll do that also. Hope to meet you all soon. And if Vinay comes up with some regular project on Bhagavad Gita, maybe 18 chapters, 18 sessions, over 700 days, over 2 years, something like that, we can plan something on a regular basis. Every 45 days, since we can have a webinar, or I can come to Yoga Vijnana and deliver a talk there on one chapter, something like that. We'll plan. We'll see how things go. But this was just a thought I thought I'll share with all of you. Have a nice time. We'll end this. Thank you, Vinay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much. See you.
Thank you.
Oh, Tanveer is here today. Thank you, Tanveer.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Nice meeting you all. Have a nice time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All the compliments. Yeah, Dhanyavada. Spend 2 minutes today reading one shloka of Bhagavad Gita. Read some meaning of it. Yeah.
All right, Swaroop. Thanks a lot. See you soon. Thank you so
Can I
much.
leave, Vinay, or should I wait for some formality?
You can just leave. Not an issue. I think you didn't give me a chance to do formalities. You can just continue.
Nothing to tell. You can continue.
No, I think it's okay. Fine. I think no. I just wanted to say something before, but anyway, it's now. There's no time for that. So let us just end it here. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.